Yes, sir, we're ready.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we'd like to begin with invocations and pledges. Welcome, everyone.
Lord, as we gather here today, we pause to reflect on the responsibility entrusted to us. May we approach our work with wisdom and clarity. May our discussions be guided by respect and a shared commitment to the success of our students and the well-being of our educators. May our time together be productive and our actions driven by a sincere desire to uplift and support one another. We ask for guidance, discernment, and unity as we move forward. We also pray for those in our community who are feeling a sense of anxiety, either from uncertainty for the future or concern about any challenges ahead. We acknowledge these emotions with compassion, and we ask to be a source of stability and service. We ask these things in your name. We pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Okay. Any public comments?
No, sir.
Okay.
But I would like to ask the board if we could get our food before we start.
Yes. Let's take a quick break, get our plates. Okay, we're going to continue with the meeting.
Yes.
I'm enjoying my lunch. Next item is consider approval of overnight trips. There's 3 of them. Board members, any questions?
I move that we approve the overnight trips.
A second.
We have a motion, a second, hearing no questions. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Consider approval of a resolution dealing with wage issues for employees involving the emergency school closure.
Yes, sir. This is due to the fact that we had to close on January 21st. Outside of employees' control, we're asking the board to approve us by resolution per board policy to address pay during the school closure so that nobody has any negative impact towards their pay. So the recommendation is the board approve the resolution dealing with wage issues involving the emergency closure for all employees on January 21st, 2025.
I move we approve the resolution.
I second.
We have a motion, a second. Questions, board members? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, now we have a couple of items of information. Strategic compensation update.
Yep. So I'm going to present this. I would like to point out some people on this team that we've created for strategic compensation. I'll get into what strategic compensation is, but every senior staff member is on our team that's leading this work. Also, we have Dr. McClellan in the audience here. Veronica Quinkle-Wilson is part of the team, and then Scott Stevens, and then some of the other EDs from C&I are on this team, and then some HR folks. Adrian Ramirez, I believe, is the other. So what is strategic compensation? Let me make sure this works.
Sorry, turn it off.
First, I want to start off by talking about Texas strategic compensation that was focused back in 2017 from House Bill 3. It started with the passing of the teacher incentive allotment, the TIA funds. We talk about budget each year, and we talk about compensation and how compensation looks, and we have to realize that we are in the people business. 80%, more than 80% of our budget goes towards compensation or benefits. We also often discuss amongst senior staff and also with the board about our district goals regarding the growth and performance of our students from pre-K to post-secondary success. Our ability to achieve these bold goals relies on the teachers who are in front of those children and also the leadership in our schools. So when we talk about strategic compensation, we're going to talk a bit about how we're going to start thinking about doing things a little differently, different ways to look at compensation in the next coming years, and to ensure that we are aligning our compensation with our outcomes. So that's really what we look at when we're talking about being strategic with our compensation plan. Where are we headed? We wanted to first talk about what we mean. We say Texas strategic compensation in the terms of looking at it on a long-term plan and how this would be rolled out. We're going to be on like I said, a multi-year journey to ensure our compensation system values are the outcomes that we expect from our teachers and our principals and our leadership. We started this journey with the implementation of the TIA funds, the Teacher Incentive Allotment. And today I have Dr. McClellan. She's going to come up and talk briefly about some important updates that we got about our TIA funds, and then briefly talk about how that came about.
Thank you, Brandon. Good afternoon, everyone. Senior staff, Dr. Ball, Board of Trustees. So this morning I received an email from TEA saying that our data has been deemed valid. So that means that the allotment that each of our 55 teachers generated this past year for the teacher incentive allotment has been deemed valid. Our data is good to go, and we will be able to give those teachers that have been designated their generated allotments this summer. So this is really exciting news. Not everyone's data is deemed valid, but ours, we got a big congratulations from TEA today. So the $673,000 that our teachers generated through the allotment will be paid to the district this summer.
So that's really good news. And I really wanted Leslie to share that with y'all, because she's been kind of the leader of our TIA and making sure that all our data is valid. And so sending that in, getting that approved by TEA and that function really validates what they've been doing and the work that's been put into place. So this is kind of like the strategic compensation goals that the state has come up with. Obviously, like I said, it's a journey. It's looking at leadership pay on our campuses and then teacher pay, and strategically using that to pay where we have better outcomes. We're going to focus on the first block, which is develop a refined principal evaluation system and look to pay our principals a little bit differently. So looking at the theory of action of strategic compensation is really straightforward, and this is straight from TEA, to build an evaluation appraisal system that are anchored in objective effectiveness, identify those who are achieving great outcomes for us, and then compensate them accordingly. This will lead to higher retention of effective educators and leaders. We'll also position Southwest ISD to recruit incredible talent across the region and state. We're not alone in this strategic compensation journey. Many of us applied for a grant and were awarded, but there's 11 other districts across the state of Texas, actually 12 other districts across the state of Texas that are doing this as well and starting this journey. That being said, some of these districts are very large. So really 1 out of every 10 students in the state of Texas is going to be impacted by this type of strategic planning, and 1 out of 9 teachers across the state of Texas. I will say this because we all agreed not to mention in an open public meeting that who these districts were, because everybody's still in the early planning of this. But we do have another district in San Antonio that's going through this planning as well. So it's also very important for us to be ahead of this type of change so that we can continue to recruit and attract and keep our talent. So let's look at the roadmap. What does it look like? So we're going to start, I mentioned we're going to start looking at our leadership on our campuses, specifically our principals. It is a multi-year process, like I mentioned, and so this is tiered. We already are starting our TIA, which is, that work started last year, and that's the teacher incentive allotment. Then we're going to, in the future, look at our educators, which are our teachers, and then obviously the one I've been talking about is our principals. So our goal is to start looking at the new principal appraisal system that we would use for this, to be implemented in the 25-26 school year, which will drive compensation for the 26-27 school year. So based on the evaluation system that we implement next year, we'll determine the following year where a principal might land on the compensation scale. The district is committed to not lowering salaries at this time, but we will have to discuss over time if a principal who is getting paid wages that are not meeting the criteria of our roadmap, or actually of our appraisal and how we're going about paying principals, how long do we hold them harmless with being ineffective? So those are discussions that we will have to have as a team and build that out. And then going in the 25-26 school year, we will begin talking about teacher strategic compensation. to be implemented in the 26-27 school year, and then driving compensation for the 27-28. At the same time, we will continue, like Leslie mentioned, that we will continue to try to get teachers in the teacher incentive allotment. Part of this strategic planning of compensation is to use our and leverage our TIA funds to do things differently. And so we want to ensure that as 27-28 comes around, we are generating the maximum amount of TIA funds to increase our general compensation pool. So what have we been doing? Here's a closer look of the previous months of work and the next 6 months of work. When it comes to our principal appraisal and compensation system, you will see we plan to engage directly with our school leaders. So on this, starting this month, we are having a group of principals work with our team to start laying out what a type of evaluation system that would be fair, unbiased, and coordinated, so that when we make decisions on who is an effective principal, we're paying based on that. And so we will continue to engage over the next few months and to hopefully implement this going into next year with the new appraisal system. Why? Is the question is, why are we looking at this? So as the person that has been pretty much bringing the board compensation plans since 2016, we've always valued experience and sizes of campuses on what we pay our principals on. And so to look at it a little differently, when you take, and this is, I'm going to say this is map data. Just looking at map data, there will be way more involved in evaluating a principal besides map data. But if you look at our map data, it is important to note that this is a singular data point, that the map data is showing that as we see principals that are providing growth for our students, they tend to be our lowest paid principals. So we have 7 principals achieving a campus growth over 50% that are making less than $96,000, where we have 4 principals that are in between the 32 and 47% that are making between $100,000 and $117,000. Even that said, we can see that our compensation system is not tightly aligned with our outcomes. So that's the difference of thinking. Instead of thinking about years of experience and the size of a campus, let's talk about outcomes first and then build in those other things. So it's not eliminating those other things, but it's to look at the outcomes first. So this is driven by the fact, if you look at it, this slide shows you that we have valued the size of your campus and your years of experience. We recognize that a principal role is different at the varying types of campuses, but we are going to move into a system where we reward outcomes first and then adjust for the other responsibilities for the certain campuses rather than the other way around. An example would to envision an effective elementary principal being compensated at a higher rate than an ineffective high school principal. That's just an example. But at equal levels of effectiveness, and then we take into considerations of the size of the campus, the different things and the different factors that play into being the different principals. Questions on that?
So, then why would you want to be a high school principal when you could just have 800 kids instead of 3,000?
So we're not eliminating those other things that cause that factor. So I'm saying that we're going to start with a principal, a high school principal. We're not saying they're not going to make what they're making now. They can actually make more if they cause growth on their campus. We will still take into consideration the factors that they are in a comprehensive high school with 2,000 students. But we're going to reverse it first and look at, okay, what would we pay them on an outcome base, and then build a plan where we honor those other things for those principals. Does that make sense? So really, when we're looking at outcomes, a part of the factor is to look at why are we paying, I don't want to say an ineffective principal, but if you look at data, we can consider it ineffective. Why are we paying them more than an effective principal? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but I also, or maybe I just don't know enough about it.
Well,
but
I know what you're
if
saying, because I agree with you. I agree that running a elementary elementary school versus a high school is different. There's a lot more to it. We're not going to devalue that piece, but we're going to find a mechanism that pays principals that have outcomes a lot more. So on top of that, where let's say the starting salary for high school principals here, the starting principal elementaries here, they have an opportunity to make a lot more money if they have effective outcomes on growth for students. That's kind of the difference.
I think that makes sense, because sometimes you could have two principals earning the same amount the other way, but one can have successful outcomes and the other one may
Correct.
not. So, yeah, you look at it like that.
And so,
So
just,
it's based on merit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
based on merit.
so kind of looking at it like this. So we were able to place the different groups in different quartiles. So the top box represents quartiles of pay. So quartile 1 is our highest paid people. They're making between 104 and 117, and then we separated them into 2, 3, 4. At the bottom, though, then we separated, not looking at what position they are, it's just where was their outcomes? Where did the students show growth? So then we had a group that was in quartile 1 where they had growth between 54 and 58% of their students showed growth on their campus, all the way down to quartile 4, which it was 33 to 40% of their students showed growth. Now, when you take that together and you overlay those quartiles, like if you look at quartile 1 for student growth versus quartile 1 for pay, and you go across, you're seeing that the people that are in growth are in the lower percentage of our quartiles of pay. So this is kind of reiterating it. I think a better picture of this, and really I will say this, at the bottom I think it shows that 9 of the 10 lowest paid principals in Southwest ISD achieved the highest growth for us on our map data. The next page, I think, is a little bit, gives you a better picture. And this is taking out the size of the campus and the years of experience. Years of experience actually would play a role in this. It's counterproductive to what I'm saying. But Principal A at elementary school, A, had 50% growth, 59% of math growth. Reading was 50, an overall combined growth of 55%. With a TPES rating, their evaluation of 3.1, and they're making $92,000 versus a middle school principal with less experience in the 30s in their both reading and math, with a lower evaluation, making $103,000. So that's kind of an example of looking at the data differently to create opportunities for that person. Not to say that we're going to pay the principal at middle school less when they're making right now, but lifting up the principal that actually is showing us growth and paying them a little bit more because of their effectiveness.
When you say paying them a little bit more, do you mean like a end of year bonus?
No, I'm
Or you're
saying that we.
their salary is gonna?
This next page, we create a salary scale that's not based on years of experience, but based on principal effectiveness. And I'll explain kind of what that would include, because it's not just map data. I'm only using map data to show effectiveness in the classroom. But creating a system and appraisal that encompasses everything that a principal does, and creating an evaluation that compensate them based on effectiveness overall. So if you look at this scale, this is just an example. So if you score a 50 in your evaluation, you could be possibly making 100,000. And so a lot of our principals that are, especially the ones that I showed you that were below $100,000, based on their effectiveness, could continue to make more money. Instead of us doing a 2% raise for them, and they get a little bit more and they keep chasing it, if they are a campus that has great outcomes, they're going to get paid more than a campus that doesn't.
So what if one year I'm a fantastic principal with fantastic growth and I'm gonna make $112,000, and then the next year I bomb? You're gonna
Correct.
take money away from me?
So what we would have to discuss, that's a great question, because the people we visited with that's doing this, they create a timeline. So if you're a principal, one year you have a great year, the next year you don't, but then next year you have a great year. So creating a window like over 3 years or 5 years, depending on how we approach this, is determining their effectiveness. So like we may hold them harness for 3 years. You have a great year, you're going to get paid this for 3 more years. Now you can make more money because you could obviously go up. But for this to work financially, the idea is the money that we're going to use towards the effective principals is that we aren't paying the ineffective principals more money. Does that make sense? So after time, if you're not an effective principal, you could have if you're scoring in the 30s, then wherever we set that over time, we'll put you back to where you are to motivate you to get back up to the effectiveness level we're expecting.
Does a year experience though, do they still get?
No. This would be,
Do they do that, do y'all do that now? Do y'all
Right now
have
we-
Where incentives were?
right now we're paying principals on what job you have. If you're a middle school, we have a scale that tells it's middle school, elementary, and high school. We have 3 scales for those principals. And then it's based on your years of experience. all years of experience. So if you were a teacher for 20 years and you have 5 years admin, we give you 25 years of experience and we pay you on that.
Well, why wouldn't we do it like TIA then? Why wouldn't we do it based on that year?
Well, TIA is not
TIA is-
based, TIA is 5 years, isn't it, Leslie? So the principal, this, teachers that are getting paid what they're getting paid this year get that for 5 years,
Whether they,
whether they have growth or not, but that's TIA.
oh.
We want to look at it a little differently.
They
We-
get that much every year for 5 years?
Mhm. Whether they're effective next year or not.
Oh, I thought it was just 1 year.
No, it's for 5 years, right? Correct. So I'm not, these questions we haven't answered. We haven't got into, these are, I know you're asking these, but we haven't answered these questions at all. In our-
Oh, okay.
So we're going through that. So we're still in the planning to discuss those. But we wanted to get in front of you to kind of give you an idea where we're headed.
Is that where everyone else, what everyone else is doing?
This is what 11 other districts across the state of Texas.
11,
Uh,
the ones that are.
This
good.
is what Dallas ISD did to get the outcomes they're getting. We have some neighboring districts that are doing performance pay, that they're seeing great outcomes. And we have been awarded a grant from the state to help us. Actually, Dr. McClellan is our leader of the group, and she works hand in hand with a lot of people from the outside to help us plan this out. This is a journey. This is not like happening next year. This would be an appraisal next year, and then the following year, we would have a new scale for principals. And then next year, we would start with the teachers, and then we would have a new appraisal for them to encompass all the things they do, and then bring in the pay. So system design, so this is an example, this is not, needs to be worked out with our principals, is how do we create an evaluation system that shows principal effectiveness? So we know there's more to being a principal than just map data, but that's what we're chasing for outcomes, accountability-wise. But we also have other areas of academic growth. They do have their TPES, which they have certain criteria that they have to meet for their evaluation. We also know that they have to have a good culture on their campus. So how do we evaluate that? So that would be part of the process. And then they have to operate the building. They have to keep the building safe. They have to make sure they're maintaining the building and having good structures on their building. So this is the part that we're going to get into with our principals, our leadership teams, and work with principals to design this. And they're going to be a part of it. So when going into this, they're going to know, okay, these are the areas that I'm going to get graded on. So if I want to be an effective principal and make this much money, here's where I'm going to have to be. So this is very high level. We haven't decided any of these things. We haven't decided the pay scale. We haven't decided the evaluation yet. But it's a journey that we're on to try to design over the year so that we can start rewarding some of these principals that are highly effective. And then at the same time, turn around and do that to all our teachers. Because our teachers right now are doing it with TIA. But imagine if we can get more teachers and attract more teachers that have come in that are highly performing so that we can pay them as much money as we can within our budget, but leveraging our resources so that we can make this happen.
When are we hoping to put this in place?
So we're going to work this year on creating the plan for principals. Especially, the key is to calibrate our evaluation. Because we got to have it, when it comes to money and evaluations, we could see there could probably be a lot of questions like, so that's the key, is to calibrate our evaluation over the next year with principal input, implement the evaluation system next year, and based on next year's evaluations, then pay the following year the principals on a new scale instead of the years of experience scale. Then starting next year, after we finish the evaluation for principals, we're going to do the teachers and start that planning for teachers so that the same steps, it goes back to this slide here. Right here. So this would be our planning. So like right now, we're here in 24, 25. You can see we have TIA, which is already happening. This is the planning for the principals. And year 25, 26, this is where we can start doing the evaluation and for those principals, and then to pay them out those salaries starting in 26, 27. Then next year, we would start with our teachers, creating this plan across the board for all teachers to create an evaluation that allows us to reward effectiveness and then evaluate with it and then pay them out starting in 27 to 28 with basically teacher performance.
I guess, I mean, I'm all for studying it more and y'all figuring out a good plan, but I would think, I think you would have to definitely consider, I mean, the size has to play a big factor because
I'm a component of that. You can ask Leslie. She knows.
if we're gonna hold elementary school who the principal doesn't have to attend evening things, they don't have to attend on Saturdays, they don't have to, they're not constantly doing something in the school. We're gonna have to figure out a way to make that more equitable. And then also, if you have, if the principal is gonna be responsible for the growth in the school, then maybe they're gonna need more autonomy on who they want at their school. Because if we're gonna say, Roxy, you're responsible for the growth at your school, but we want you to take these two people because they're not effective anywhere else. So that's just gonna be a very difficult
Correct.
thing. If she's responsible for that high school, then she has to have a lot of say on what
Yeah.
goes in and out of that high school.
Well, I think that, great points. I think the idea behind it is we may have some people that are, I don't want to say they're ineffective because of complacency, but maybe they're not, feel like they're rewarded enough to,
No, I'm all for
Yeah.
rewarding it. I'm just
Correct.
saying we're gonna, and then there has to be like 0 subjective evaluation pieces, like,
and I think
I
that's.
mean, that's always been the fear when we've always done merit-based pay, is the fear is that if the principal likes the teacher, they're gonna get a few more points on this, or if administration doesn't like the principal, then they get a few less points on that, so it's gonna have to be very, very clear cut with no subjective, I think you're doing good.
I think that our, the calibration the team has already kind of worked on, because our data wouldn't got validated from the state if we weren't doing that.
Right.
So.
No, I know
for
the
the
TIA
For the
were
teachers that are
doing
getting
that.
the TIA. So we hear all your points. Those are the same discussions we had to the state of Texas when they brought this to us, to TEA, the group that's working with us, because those are the same, these are the exact same conversations we're having on our every meeting, exactly where you're heading. Like what you're saying is exactly where we need to make sure that we have cleaned up.
So once the plan becomes more concise, you'll probably have answers to those
Correct.
questions and iron out the details on how you're gonna figure it out, huh?
So this spring is, the goal is to work with the team, with principal input, to create a evaluation that's coordinated and calibrated, so there's fairness, and I know you mentioned bias or unbiased, but making sure we have a good system in place, because yes, we don't want, like, have a bunch of grievances when we get to a point where we're having these decisions about money. So creating that is important, and then after that, creating a scale that's I would say fair for the different levels of the campus, but also the key component, yes, is we want you to chase outcomes. And we understand that you were a high school or a middle school or elementary, and we'll figure out a way to navigate that. But I think for the most part, our principal's working really hard, and we got some right now, they're working really hard, they're showing lots of growth, and we're not rewarding them with just based that next year might get a raise based on your years of experience.
Yeah.
Or 2%. Or you might make $20,000 next year because you're now moved to a different level on that pay scale based on outcomes. And I think that could motivate our principals and then, in essence, the teachers.
So Brandon, currently, we're looking at principals and principals only.
We're starting with principals because we kind of have TIA happening already with teachers. So we're going to start with our principals so that I think it's a small group for us to get it right.
Vice principals included, or?
We're going to start, well, I think we'll start with principals, and as we move into the teachers, we'll be working with the assistant principals too. Pretty much bringing everybody else along the next year. I think we wanted to do principals first so that we could start with the leadership on the campus, work through all of it, growing pains, and then move to the bigger group.
Larger.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure they're involved in the conversation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to.
Everything that just kind of, everything that you shown me, that's how I get paid at work.
Yeah.
Everything's performance-based pay and merit pay. And it just, to do something and you strive more to accomplish, it affects your paycheck.
Yeah.
So in a roundabout way, it's gonna be good, but I understand what you're saying.
Well, also,
Yeah.
if somebody has a way bigger route than
Yes.
you, I mean, they might make more money than you
Yeah.
because they have more opportunity
They
to
do. They do.
whatever, but,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
Any more questions? That's all I have.
Okay, discussion of intruder detection audit.
Mark has a few things
Where is he?
to say.
I haven't seen him.
He's coming, before we go into closed session.
Who's hiding?
Afternoon. The top priority of our district is keeping students, staff, and visitors safe every day. TA recently conducted intruder detection audits at several of our campuses. These audits test whether a campus is accessible to an unauthorized individual and also helps districts to identify how campuses can improve safety and security. We acknowledge that parents and community members are likely very interested in the details of the audit results. However, it is in the best interest of students that we do not share this information to the broader public, as it could lead to compromise in security information. Specific details of the IDA, intruder detection audit, will be discussed today in executive session and also with the District Safety and Security Committee later this month.
Any questions? No? Thank you. We'll see you in a little bit. Oh, is this right?
No, it's definitely.
Okay. Do you have something you want to bring up before we go into closed session?
Okay.
I'd like to take a few minutes to thank the board for all attending on Friday. I think all of y'all were able to attend our Penguin program, and you saw the amazing performance our students did. Want to thank Dr. Hogan. I know that Richard is not here, but hopefully he'll get the message to thank Dr. Hogan and Richard for their leadership, the countless staff. I mean, there's so many staff, but when you set high expectations for students, they certainly perform, and perform they did. So just wanted to spend a few minutes thanking the staff for that amazing production, because it's not something that happens overnight. They're already starting to plan for next year. So thank y'all for that. So please, I sent Dr. Hogan an email saying, what could we come up with to do to recognize the staff that worked so hard for this? So I wanted to share that. Then there's a few items that are happening within our district. Not one of them, not necessarily that we're sponsoring or anything, but the cancer boot dance is happening this Friday from 6 to midnight at Country Gold. So just wanted to let y'all know about that. We have our food distribution on the 12th. If anybody wants to help out for that. Lots of games going on tonight. We have boys varsity baseball versus John Jay at Titan Gym. And then we have girls softball and Titan, also at Legacy. We have girls varsity versus McCollum at Southwest High School. Soccer games at both complexes. So lots of games going on tonight.
Board, anything? No? Okay. Therefore, as permitted by sections 551.001 through 551.146 of the Texas Government Code and 551.074 on personnel administrator employment and 551.076 through 551.089 for discussion on intruder detection audit report. We will now go into closed session at 12:11. I'd like to call this meeting back into order at 1:23. After our closed session, there is no action needed other than to approve the audit report findings.
I move that we approve the audit report findings.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All against, I guess I shouldn't say it, to be technically correct. Okay, motion passes. Anything else?
Again, just wishing you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you very much.
And then we're gonna have all your gifts put in a box.
Okay,
Oh.
thank you very much. Okay. Board members, anything? None? Meeting closed. 1:23.